Hey, good morning everybody, and welcome back to the channel. And what a beautiful morning it is. And today is Independence Day. Although we're a few days away from July 4th, by the time this video is done, you're going to have a little more independence on your energy. And I've heard from a lot of you that have been gathering up your components, and today we're going to put them together, and when it's over, you're going to have some independence. All right, I believe I have everything we need to get your little independent solar system up and running here, and it's not going to take very many tools at all. I've just got some wire strippers, a couple of sockets, and a Phillips, and a very small flathead. Of course, we've got our battery, charge controller, little extra 10 gauge wire, cutoff switch, a resistor for when we hook up the inverter to the battery, and we've got our gas gauge here. So you've been following the series, you've got all your stuff together. This is about all we need. If I find I need a different tool, I will show you, but I think I've got everything laid out here. Of course, we've got our inverter. Let's tie it up. And when I build one of these little systems, I like to work from the inverter all the way through the system up to the solar panels coming in through the charge controller and the cutoff switch. So there's the back of the inverter, and I know I'm going to need a negative cable on there as well, but we're going to tie up this shunt, which is part of the battery monitor, so we can see this is our fuel gauge that will show us what the state of charge is in a percentage value for us. So I'm going to hook this up first. And on these shunts, you've got a battery negative and a power negative. So we're going to hook this up first, the battery negative side. So I've got that on there. I don't have it tight yet because as I connect it to the inverter and get it all tied into the battery, I may need to adjust this a little bit to work with the limited amount of space we're going to use today. And this is some 22 gauge wire, very, very thin wire. And this is going to what turns on your gas gauge. But, you know, that's what we're calling the battery monitor gauge, because it is your fuel gauge. And it just ties in. There's a, right here on this little green connection here, there's two different places you can connect to. They both say B positive. It doesn't matter which hole you go into on that with your 22 gauge wire. So I've just got it on that left side right there. Takes an extremely small screwdriver. So yeah, I like to get that in there because once you get this in a different position, it's going to be very difficult to work with, but you can see just exactly how small we're talking about. I mean, this is so small. I actually had to get a special screwdriver for this the first time I installed one of these. All of my others were way too big, but this will work. But it's super, super small. So keep that in mind when you're hooking up one of those. So that's in, and then on the other end of your stripped wire, I like to put a very small ring terminal clamp on there for hooking up to the positive side of the battery, and that will turn your monitor on. So that's all crimped on there. And I had stripped a little too much case off of there, so I made sure to cover that all up with some electrical tape so there's never a chance that that will make contact with anything, so that's good. I probably should have cut that wire off a little bit, but I'm going to disconnect it after we do this experiment, or this little installation for you guys. So, but that's safe there. Okay, in order to make this work on this configuration, I'm working with some pretty short cables, only 1 foot battery cables here. And then you need an extra one to connect your shunt to the battery negative side. That will go right to here. we've got the positive already tied in with the fuse there. And then I've got everything cinched down nice and tight here, nice and tight there, and nice and tight here. So without the negative connected, I should be able to see that my battery monitor, or from the shunt, should work when I just make contact with this little ring terminal here, right here on the positive side, because this goes to the positive. And so I'll just touch this and see if I can catch that monitor at the same time. It should come on. And there you can see the light came on right there. So we know that that's going to work. And now what I'm going to do is go ahead and tie up the negative side. Well, first what I'll do is I'm just going to go ahead and undo this and clamp it on there properly. I just wanted to make sure that everything was looking good, and it is. Take that off, and now I'm going to go ahead and put it on there. So we're making this look just the same as this unit here, minus the bus bars. I'm just doing it without bus bars. I like using the bus bars, of course, but for this I'm not going to need them. I'm just going to tie up a very simple system to get us up and running. And I just have this on finger tight right now because I still haven't hooked up the charge controller. So I want to do that before I go ahead and make the system completely live. And right here I've just got a very short run of 10 gauge wire, both positive and negative. I have stripped both ends. They're only about 12 or 14 inches long, and that'll work good for our purposes today. But we need both ends stripped on both lines. And on one side I can leave them bare, and then on the other end I'm going to go ahead and crimp on a couple of these to tie onto the battery as well. And like I mentioned before, on this particular style of the Victron Pt.4, very small holes to get your wire in. It will easily accept 10 gauge, but nothing much bigger than that. But it's perfect for 10 gauge. And I've got those cinched down nice and tight, battery positive, battery negative. And then on this end, I've got the rings clamped on there, nice and tight. Check all your connections, make sure they're nice and tight. Those are very good. Okay. And now I'm jumping back to where on the positive side, where I just had this just very finger tight, barely, just enough to make sure that our battery monitor was working correctly. And now I'm going to take the positive end of the charge controller and put it on here. And again, we're not completely live, and I'm going to go ahead and finger tighten that up, and then I'm going to put a wrench on it and get it good and tight, because done with the positive side now. Okay, so I'm tight here on the inverter. I put a little set of pliers on there and give that a little extra cinching down nice and tight. I've rechecked these nice and tight on the battery shunt monitor. Got everything on the positive side cinched down tight. Now here's where that resistor comes into play, so we don't get a spark, because if we were to touch this negative side right now to the negative terminal right there, we would get a spark, and the sparks can go in there, like I've mentioned before, and actually damage those threads. You know, the spark can be very, very hot and, actually damage those threads to make it very difficult to get your terminal bolts back in there. So we want to eliminate that. Okay, now I'm going to take this resistor that I've showed you guys before, wire on each end, slip one end through the negative terminal, pull this over and touch the other wired end to the top of the battery negative terminal, and this is kind of pre-charging all the little capacitors without getting a spark. So now we're good to go ahead and put this cable on there without getting a spark, and let's see if I'm correct. We should not get a spark, and it's a little tight in here, but There we go. And I'll kind of bend that wire down here when I get a free hand. Okay, did not get a spark, of course, because we use that resistor. And I'm just going to try and push this down a little bit so it'll lay a little flatter. My shunt be a little flatter. So there we go. Now everything is hooked up. The charge controller should have a blinking light to indicate that it's on now, because, you know, the battery positive and battery negative are now tied up. There's the battery positive for the charge controller. There's the battery negative for the charge controller. We've got this negative cable going to the B negative side, battery negative side of the shunt. And then on the P negative or power negative side, it goes from there to the inverter. So now, without turning this around, I should be able to turn the inverter on, find the switch, and we should hear it come on. And there we go. So now the inverter's ready to go. We could start running the load off of this. And the last thing that we've got to do is tie up some solar to this. And then that's a complete little build. Now, obviously, you know, you'll probably use longer cables. You don't have to. I mean, this would be okay, just like this, but, you know, you could do something like that. Same thing. Those are just extensions of the battery, like I've mentioned before, the battery terminals. It makes it for a nicer installation, especially putting things up on the wall. You know, this shunt has screw holes pre-drilled in it to attach it to whatever you want, like up against a wall. But I'm just making do with some spare parts here to show you just how easy this all is to hook up your system. And that's the order I like to do it in. I like to work from the inverter to the battery, you know, get the shunt in there, hook this up dead last, you know, get your charge controller all hooked up as well. Super, super easy. But now it's ready to go. Now it's reading, you know, the fuel gauge is reading 100% full. That's not completely accurate now. That will have to be set after we get this battery up to a full charge. I've showed you guys how to do that many times with these. But anyway, it's a pretty full battery, but it's not 100% full. So now that we've got this up and running, let's take a quick look at the app that these have that you can download onto your device and then get this set properly. Okay, so I've opened up the Victron app, and right away we can see that says, this is that charge controller right there, the 7515, and it says portable power board. That's what I named it in a previous experiment when we made a little portable power board with it. So anyway, let's go ahead and open that up, and you'll see as soon as you do that, the lights start flashing to connect to there. Of course, it shows 0 watts coming in because we have yet to tie up the solar. So let's go back to there, and let me get up to the settings. And let's go to the settings. Let's go to the battery. We know we're running 12 volt, and we've got it set to smart lithium iron phosphate, so that's fine. Absorption voltage 14.2, 13.5. So this is ready to go. The only thing it doesn't know is what size battery we're working with. So we will tell that right now what it's doing, or what size that battery is. First thing I did was set it for this max charge current of 15 amps. Since that's what we're running, a 7515. The 15 is for amps. 75 is for the current coming off your solar panels. And let's take a quick look at this monitor. If you press the left, there's 3 different buttons you can touch for different values. You touch the left one, and it shows what the battery voltage is reading, 13.30. And on the Victron charge controller, 13.31, so extremely close there. and the inverter is on right now. So let's touch this again. Touch the center one time, and it shows what the load is right now, and it's 0.4 amps, 0.3, 0.4, jumping around there. Now that's with the inverter on in the standby position. Let's turn the inverter off real quick. And right there you can just see it drop down to not drawing any power really. Just absolute minimal. Nothing. Okay, good. And let's just take a quick look on the center button. What it reads, 199.8 amp hours. If we press and hold that, there we go. So it's set for 200 amp hours now. So when it goes through a full charge cycle, this will all be reading accurately, and then your percentage will be fine. I'll just press that one more time. Let's go over to percentage. So once it would go up to, you know, the full absorption and float and everything, then you just go over here to the right and press it one time and hold it just for a couple of seconds, and you'll know you're 100% full, and then this gauge will read accurately as you draw down. You get down to 90%, it'll say 90%. So very easy to get this up and running, and now it is. We got the fuel gauge working, charge controllers working. Let's get a little solar running in here. Okay, and what I did, I stripped the ends off some 10 gauge here, put the negative on the negative side of our solar panel cutoff switch. As you can see, it's the same negative here, positive here, same on the bottom, just goes straight down, negative, this is negative, positive up here, this is positive. Got that hooked up. Now the opposite ends of this will go straight into the charge controller. So from the bottom of the cutoff switch, we got negative and positive going into the PV negative and PV positive right there. And now obviously you'd want to make as short of run as possible with this wire, but yeah, I'm just working with some spare parts and I don't really want to cut up all this 10 gauge that I've got. I'm going to keep it kind of long, but you get the idea. Make your runs as short as possible, kind of like on there. And now I'm just going to take this up to the existing solar coming in. I'll disconnect it there, plug this in right up there as well, and we will be charging this system now. Okay, so all I did to pull from this system, I shut the panels off with the existing switch that was on this particular system, and I just tied it in to our cutoff switch for this system we just built. Now I left this off, of course, while I was hooking it all together, so there's no power coming in right now to the battery through the charge controller, but we're all hooked up. So let's review. We've tied up the inverter. We've got it all tied into the shunt, which acts as your battery monitor. We've got everything tied in to the battery terminals as opposed to going with bus bars, which you may choose to do, but this actually works just fine. Now of course this is kind of a mess, and I'm using much longer wires from the cutoff switch up there to the charge controller, but like I said, I didn't want to start cutting this stuff up because I'm going to be using it again. So now for the big test. So here we are, we're looking at the app. Zero power coming in, of course. Let's reach up here now. Solar panels are on. And there we go. 150 watts coming in. We've got 53 volts, 60 some volts now coming through to the charge controller. Which is, you know, a 75 volt 15 amp charge controller, so we're well within the voltage for this particular charge controller. 100 and fluctuating. I've got fast moving clouds as usual out there, reading the battery voltage at 13.49 currently, Everything's looking good. We are charging this system that we just built. It's Independence Day for those of you that have been dragging your equipment out of the closet where you've been accumulating your stuff for a while. And everything's looking real good. Now, like I said, when this would go through a full, complete charge, then I'd come back here and press this right button and just hold it down for a couple of seconds and tell it that that is 100% full once it got through its full charging cycle. But that's the beauty of having the Victron app. You'll know when you're fully charged. Goes through the absorption all the way, clicks over to float, it's full. Come over here, press the right button, hold it for a couple of seconds, tell it it's 100% full, and then from then on you can just look at this at a glance when you're walking by and see what your battery fuel tank looks like, how much you've got going in there. So yeah, now what we got to do here is we got to go call this, we got to change this. We're going to go to edit here because in a previous experiment I called it the portable power board, and that's not going to work for today. So we'll click on that, delete it, and Independence Day, exclamation point. Okay, there you go. You've created your first system. You gathered up all your stuff. You've got some energy Independence Day, and you named your system appropriately. Independence Day. There you go. Just that easy. Get back out of here. Now we see Independence Day on a quick glance. Got other Victron things tied in there, but we know that's Independence Day. Congratulations to all of you. There you go. 200 watts coming in. Looking real good. So, from start to finish, that was pretty easy, right? Hope I explained everything good for you guys. And congratulations. You are semi-independent and keep taking steps in that direction. Be your own power station. Right on. All right, you guys, I hope you found this interesting, and I hope I was able to convey to you how easy it is to do this. This, of course, can be improved upon, and you know, how you put it in is how you want to put it in for yourself, but I was making do with some spare parts here today and showing you guys that it's just not that difficult. So there you go. Very few tools needed. Now you get great satisfaction. Just glance at your app, glance at your fuel gauge. You know you've done everything right and you're good to go. And if I turn that around, we could plug devices into that inverter now and start running things. So I'm going to deconstruct this now, but I just wanted to show you we did this in just a short period of time. It is still technically morning here, just barely, but it did not take that long. Once I had all the components ready to go, laid it out, thought about it, and this was, you know, like I said, I was trying to work with what I had. This can be definitely improved upon. Maybe make it look something more like that, of course, or maybe something like this in a more portable type of a station. I mean, this could all be configured onto a hand truck if you wanted to, very easily for portable power anywhere like we did before. So lots of different ideas, but step by step how to get you up there. And I think most people get a little confused about how to hook this shunt up, but it's very, very easy, as you see. So everything's good shape. There we go. And then here comes a cloud, and you're watching your app, of course, like I always do. It's like, oh, there goes the power, but it's gonna come back and charge you up. And these are the conditions that are happening here today. You can see lots of fast moving clouds. Opens up, hits the panels, get a great burst of sun, but it's constantly charging regardless if there's a few floaters going by. All good. Charging all day. Giving you what you need. All right, guys, I hope you've been really enjoying this beginner series. And I have seen a lot of you say, hey, I'm breaking that stuff out of the closet right now because it's time. Take those steps towards some energy independence. Even a little system like this can save you some money on your electric bill. And if you decide to go bigger, you could just go off grid. Aloha, everybody.